Even though no one physically has yet, I can hear it being asked. What do the crystal transmissions have to do with out-of-body experience? So here we are in a couple simple sentences because I want to make this as easy to understand as possible. An out-of-body experience is an expansion of consciousness from the physical space, from the earth life space, from our planetary sphere, out into a wider sphere. For me, this wider sphere was galactic space. Okay, the crystal transmissions are simply a transferring of the contents of galactic space here into our planetary space, the contents of non-local consciousness, non-local space into our local space. So whereas before in my reporting, I was simply vocally relaying to you the contents of my experience, we now have visuals. This is fascinating. To me anyway, this is fascinating. We now have visuals to accompany the vocals. In the reporting, and again, it is my hope that a deeper form of channeling will also, vocal channeling will also begin to accompany the visual channeling, which has already begun. Atanas wrote in with a question the other day, and it's got me thinking. He asked me if I'd relay more of my face-to-face experience with my galactic counterpart, who is an Anunnaki being. And I promised myself I wasn't going to sidetrack here, but I think I'm going to sidetrack here a little bit. The conscious out-of-body experience that I have with this one, although is vast, visually is limited, because this one was always just behind my peripheral vision and my experiences. And my central nervous system had not yet been prepared to visually see him. The Anunnaki are a dragon reptilian race. This is my current understanding, and the images that I get of him through the crystal also somewhat represent this as being accurate. So almost all of the out-of-body experiences I've relayed on my channel include him, but again, he's always just back behind my line of vision. And so I'm going to use Atanas' question to attempt to bring something visually more forward through into my full conscious awareness that I can bring fully back with me into the physical. And when that happens, I will relay this. I'd be fascinated to relay this, to experience it and relay it. The ETs that I have visually met and have experience with began with my very first experience. The very first galactic consciousness that came to meet me was a young indigenous boy, 15 years old, by the name of Mesahari. He is an indigenous Indian, although not indigenous to our planet. And this makes me want to go into just relaying a bit about what an extraterrestrial is, what extraterrestrial consciousness is. I'm just going to tell you how I use the term, what I'm referring to when I say an ET or extraterrestrial or galactic consciousness. This is a being who has graduated or transcended from his planetary sphere and is now able to traverse and experience in galactic space. This being is an extraterrestrial consciousness because everywhere it goes, in addition to its own home planet, it's going to be considered an extraterrestrial too. So I myself, now that I have exceeded my planetary sphere and am exploring and experiencing in galactic space am an extraterrestrial. I'm an extraterrestrial to everyone I meet on every planet save my own. Yes? Okay, so when I say galactic consciousness, this is what I'm referring to. I'm simply referring to any being who has graduated out beyond its own planetary sphere. Okay, so Mesahari was the first one that I came into contact with, who began taking me out into galactic space. And then there was Sokesh, and Sokesh actually appeared to be fully human, if not Earth human, from another time in our timeline, and also had exceeded planetary space. And I won't go into our experience. I sort of want to, but I have in the past. I'm just going to go forward now with a couple real classic ET type beings. One was Kron, and he looked like a Wolverine type of being, and one who gave the name of Sabatonite. And that name just fascinates me. That when I hear a name in these experiences, it's always so tickling. So this was an experience with this being, was attempting to get my consciousness to let go of human filters and to see the space I was experiencing, and himself, this being I was interacting with, as the space and as this being actually were, because I was applying a human filter to everything and was seeing him as human, whereas he very much was not. At the end of this experience, which was actually the beginning, we were up on a craft, and I got to see him because the filters released, and I understood that this was one of my physical body or etheric body examinations, which often occur with me with the ETs. And I was on the table, and he was walking by, and he was just paper white. He was very humanoid in appearance, but white as paper. And the entire purpose of that interaction was to help propel me from the planetary sphere to galactic space, and in visioning that galactic space more as it actually is, rather than through my own filtering, that allowed the experiences to be more comfortable for me until my central nervous system was more apt for something more. So, I'm going to keep this one short. This is the connection. These are entirely associated. The expansion of consciousness, the consciousness exploration, the out-of-body experience with the crystal transmissions. It's really interesting, and I guess I will start to go into this now, that there's different types or various types of interactions that do occur with me through the crystal. Only one of the types of interaction are the transmissions, where a galactic consciousness through this crystal is transmitting to me. It's a communication, which is why I call this crystal communication, because we're able to communicate from its space to mine via the mean of the crystal. And I know that this is really hard to understand, hard to grasp, hard to buy into. Believe me, I know. It was happening with me for years before I would concede to the fact that these may be transmissions, or at least some of them may be transmissions. Some of them I know now definitely are transmissions. This is one of the ways that I'm now experiencing. Is the out-of-body experience still happening? Yes. Is it still happening at the same pace and rate that it was in the past? No, because once you exceed the planetary sphere, You can vacate the planetary sphere, and because my being does not wish to vacate at this point, it has to stay grounded here. And if the out of body experience were to continue at the almost daily rate for 4 years that it did between the years of 2009 and 2013, then I would have wholly left the planet. And yes, I am one of the ones who will dematerialize from here without dropping the body. I will be able to shift from one consciousness in one form to another consciousness in another form, which is the basis of the out of body experience I had, again, near daily for 4 years. Those years, I get to rambling and then forget where I left off. The types of transmissions. So yeah, just one type of the interactions through the crystal are transmissions. But then others is what I call the reading of the rocks. I am a seer, an alchemist. In my template, in my universal and galactic template, this is a capacity that is actualized in many reality systems. And so I can actually read the record stored in these rocks, in these stones. And so some of the renderings that I bring through are this. It's an actual reading of the history of the rock itself, and also information that potentially is stored in them. Again, fascinating, just fascinating. There's other types that come through as well, and maybe I'll do a separate video on this at another time if anyone happens to be interested, or maybe if just my interest goes, because a lot of information comes through for me that I don't get in any other way than when I attempt to relay it to you. Again, fascinating in itself how this all works. I hope you found this helpful, and I'll be back to report again soon.